Ooby-doo, it's everyone's favorite boomer and vintage lens enthusiast. And I'm still exploring the Vello LAE-SEP-CEF auto lens adapter, Canon EFS to Sony E-mount. Now previously I spoke about this lens, the Canon lens EF 24mm 2.8, and how it doesn't autofocus. You have to focus it manually, but the camera does control the aperture. You could dial in the aperture and shoot, so that's great. So I gotta leave it on manual focus, and it turns out this is a nice lens. I thought it was mediocre or I was getting spotty results. Well, we'll get back to that in a moment. This is the old EFS 18 to 55mm. It's only autofocus only. It came with the original 6 megapixel digital Rebel, which I used so much that it died on me. And that's the only Canon camera I had die on me. So I got rid of that lens the camera body, and I kept this lens, and it was kicking around for a long time. And I said, well, let's see if it works with this Vello adapter. And you know what? The autofocus works. You could dial in the aperture. It moves all the EXIF over, like whatever f number you're at and whatever focal length you're at. It puts that into the EXIF file, which is pretty cool, right? So I want to go back to this lens. This lens I have to use in manual mode. In manual mode, I go to the manual focus in the camera, the manual focus magnifier, which is like 10x. And then I just move the ring back and forth until I get, it looks like it's in focus. And so by eye, sometimes you go like this, oops, I passed it. And you gotta go back, oh, I passed it. And then you go back there. So you hunt, you know, manually you hunt. And this is a weird lens. You can't squeeze this focusing collar. You have to just rotate it without squeezing it, or else it binds up. But that's, I always have this problem. Wherever I want to, when I'm turning the focusing ring or collar, I always go back and forth, and finally I fine-tune it. So what do you think this thing does, this Vello adapter in this lens? It hunts, because I could see what it's doing in the viewfinder. I see it hits a little square in the middle, which is white, and it turns green when it's in focus. But it'll overshoot the focus, come back and go back. Sometimes it'll do it 4 times, but then it hits the focus, turns green, you take a picture. And whenever this thing said it was in focus, the pictures were in focus. But it hunted, just like a human being would hunt, you know, back and forth until you get, oh, it's right there, you know, like that. So what does this mean? This lens turned out to be a pretty decent lens. I thought it was garbage for a long time, or mediocre at best. No, I was looking at all the pictures I took, and they're all nice and sharp. So what does this mean? This means that autofocus isn't really cracked up what it's supposed to be, especially on earlier model camera bodies. The autofocus, I don't know, was it like, you would think autofocus would be 95%? No, it's more like 75%. And this thing wasn't perfect, but it was, this Canon lens focused better with this adapter on a Sony A or A5000 than it did on any of the Canon, actual Canon bodies that I put it on, which is the XT, the XTI, the T1i, and even the T3i. So I don't know what to say. So this is a good combo with this camera. I took it out on a day when we had the Canadian fire smoke in the Northeast United States. I figure it's a crap lens. If it gets smoky, I don't care. But it performed admirably. I have to admit, I like the results I got. Were they outstanding? Well, they were close to outstanding. I think so. It has some barrel distortion on the lower end, and it seems to get better when you go to the telephoto 55 end. At 24 millimeters, it compares pretty close. There's no doubt about it. This is a fine lens. I mean, if you nail the focus, it's a great lens. And that's the problem. You go out and you spend $350 or $400 for a lens, and then it doesn't autofocus like 95% of the time. You think the thing is garbage, but it turns out it's a good lens. And this is the problem, like I mentioned before. Old DSLRs that had the optical viewfinder, they had no focusing aids in the viewfinder at all because they figure you're going to use autofocus, right? So even if you try to focus, all you have is like a plain matte screen. It's virtually impossible to see when the exact focus is. So you would need a focus magnifier, a viewfinder, you know, that clips onto the viewfinder that magnifies it. But even that is iffy because since the manufacturer is relying on you using the autofocus off the chip or wherever they put the autofocus, maybe the relationship between the fill plane or the sensor plane isn't the same where that viewfinder is, right? Because it has to bounce up a mirror and hit the screen. And if they're not at the same spot, even if you focus exactly on the optical screen, maybe it's not going to be in the same relationship distance as the chip is. So there's that problem. Why does this work? This ancient lens, there's just a kit lens that was included with every camera just so you could get up and running and take pictures. Did they do that purposely? They say, well, we'll make the autofocus a little smushy so you think it's a garbage lens, but it's actually a pretty good lens. I don't know what to think. I do not know what to think. So I got this on my Frankenstein MacGyvered Hoodman, and I didn't have to go to, there's 2 times when I had to use a manual focus. That's when I was taking a picture of the red-orange ball. The sun was that hazy at 2:30 in the afternoon. And then there's certain backlit conditions confused the living daylights out of the autofocus. And besides from that, everything else was in autofocus. And it did a really great job. In fact, the couple of blurry pictures I got was from unintentional camera movement and not the fact that it was out of focus because of this thing. But on this combination, the Sony A5000, this adapter, I only have 3 lenses that I could use. The other ones only work partially. That is anything over 55 millimeters, it just goes into error mode. But since this one only goes up to 55 millimeters, well, then there's no problem. This one, at least notice that none of these have aperture rings. So you have to control the aperture through the camera, and it does that. That's great. It did that on all the lenses. The lenses that had IS, image stabilization, it energized that and it worked too. Okay, so it's got that going for it, so that's great. But this is $100. I had this with the camera I bought and it's gone. I bought this, I used it, and then it laid fallow for a while because I just could not get this thing to hit the focus correctly. I even tried to lock the focus on different subjects that were not where I wanted, but that was just so impractical. But by using the manual focus digital zoom, I was able to nail the focus on this and get great results. And we looked at the pictures from this. I went out, like I said, during the Canadian wildfire smoke, and I took a bunch of pictures. But I included 2 from these because it was like 2 days before, 1 day before smoke came in, and you could see the difference of what the smoke was doing. And then I'm also going to include some pictures for the day or 2 after when the smoke blew away with a different lens. So, but I have more respect for this. And how many lenses? I have so many lenses like that, where I thought they were mediocre or garbage or crap, and it turns out it was always a focusing issue. And it doesn't matter, of course, what system. Mostly Canon and Pentax, where without a doubt, using the manual focus digital zoom is the best way to go, but it's slow and cumbersome. You're going to miss shots unless you have this set hyperfocal. This thing actually has a scale, hyperfocal scale for f/22 and f/11. But if you look, the infinity goes past the index mark. So what does that mean? They're allowing for temperature variations, this, that, and other thing. I mean, that's really not infinity. Infinity might be, you see, this lens is goofy like that. That's about the best you could get. So you have to play with it even manually to get it on a number. But it's still a good lens. Its optical quality is excellent. This is a really, really decent lens, and it's up there. It's up there. Now, the only thing, like I said, it had some barrel distortion at the wide angle lens, but it was just as sharp at 18 as it was at 55. And of course, it's very, very slow. 3.5 to 5.6. So I was shooting this a lot wide open, even at ISO 800, especially if I was under some trees and stuff. That's just the way it is. If this is a 2.8, it would have been stopped down 2 f-stops and you'd be getting even better results. But considering that I was shooting it wide open a lot, I'm very impressed with this lens. So this particular model, that has just autofocus and nothing else, they're like 25 or 30 bucks. So if you have some sort of Sony camera and you want to get a decent lens for it with your Vello adapter, you can invest in one of these, no problem. So the only other lens I have that works is a EFS 10 to 18, which is a wide angle zoom. And that seems to work really good too. And I'm going to do another extended photo shoot of that, probably in the city. But let's just jump right into the pictures and then you can decide yourself. So in the beginning of July 2023, there's the big giant Canadian forest fire, and all smoke blew down the east coast of the United States, and the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania got hammered. So I went to that park that day, I believe it was a Wednesday, and there was no one there because it was an extreme health alert, so everyone stayed inside. And I bought my 17 to 55 millimeter EFS Canon lens, and I had it on a Vello adapter on a Sony A or A5000, and these are the results. And I was very pleased with it. The thing hunted back and forth, but it did get an autofocus confirmation I could see on the screen, and I took a picture, and I was surprised that I got like 90% success rate. I got a couple blurry pictures from unintentional camera motion. I was using ISO 400 and 800, and even at 5.6 I was only using the 80th or 60th or even slower, but it still came out really good. And I don't know what to think. I just don't know what to think. I mean, I thought this is a crappy lens when I used it on Canon cameras. Oh, this is a manual focus. I had to manual focus this. This is the sun, believe it or not, at 2:30 in the afternoon, which means it's still high up in the sky. And it was hazy and nasty. This lichen is whitish and greenish, and it looks definitely reddish here. The sun was going through thicker parts of smoke, and it would get really dark, and then it'd go through thinner parts of smoke, and it was casting these orange shadows, and they were really faint orange shadows. Now, we've seen this bridge before, and I use it as like a standard test picture. And it's to the lower left-hand corner. That's great for a cheap ass, mass-produced lens. But it worked good with this system. This lens was kicking around for, I don't know, 15 years or 20 years or something. After the original digital Rebel died, and I kept meaning to throw it out or give it away or sell it for $5. And well, it's a good thing I did. This picture is a little blurry from the unintentional camera motion. Look at it, 20th of a second. And then I nailed it right here, almost perfect. I was so pleased with this. So, all right, I bought this adapter. It cost $100. None of my other lenses, expensive lenses, work with it. All the zooms that are over 55 millimeters, I get an error message. So, look at the difference between what 1 or 2 days makes with the smoke. It's a beautiful, wonderful day, and then you get this hazy, smazy crap. But look at the leaves in the background, how they look like leaves and they're all smeared and everything. So this is a pretty decent lens, without a doubt. Pretty decent. I focused on this tuft purposely just to see how it would do. Yeah, you know, I was not getting any rain, and all the pools and the streams are like drying up, and I got some film on it, and it looks all post-apocalyptic. And you could see the orange tint. Now, the orange tint was at times worse, not just when I was at the park. And I was stupid. I had the automatic white balance on, and it was correcting for it, so I had to shut it off. And I enhanced it a little bit by going up 2 clicks red, 3 clicks red, 2 clicks green, and -5 clicks blue. And I didn't go overboard. I just wanted to just enhance it because it looked that way to your eye, like this orange color, and everything was low contrast, and everything had this hazy look through it. And there's a lot of these bushes filled with white flowers. For some reason, it was the white flower week. Here's the upper right-hand corner. That's amazing for a cheap lens. So I was just letting it sit in a desk. I had it in a drawer, and I was like really neglecting it. But now I cleaned it up, and I put it in its own plastic box, and I'll just keep using it on occasion. Here are those pesky ancient astronauts, and the lighting was perfect, so you could see all the nooks and crannies without any harsh contrast. It's a little soft in the upper right-hand corner. This is one day before the Canadian forest fire smoke. This is with the Canon EF 24mm manual focus. Here it is with the 18 to 55 panorama mode. That is the max smoke. And here's the day after the Canadian forest fire. This is a Canon FD 28mm. And this is a 1:1 crop. I was amazed how sharp this came out. Amazing. That's, what could I say? Nice lens. This goes to show you. You just never know about things.